Paul Hudrick, 97.3 ESPN at Paul Hudrick. Coming in for a landing is the podcast for the 76ers. Take a listen to that. And, of course, we'll go inside the Sixers each day at this time as the Sixers getting ready. 6-1, trying to extend that to 7-1, best record in the NBA. Paul, do we have any info on Embiid these next couple of nights yet?
We don't have anything yet. I think Doc Rivers likes it that way. I think he wants to keep us all in the dark. The plan, as Broge just touched on, the plan was to have him play that last back-to-back. He just had that back tighten up on him, and they just figured it wasn't worth it, which I tend to agree with that decision. You have a long season ahead of you, and if something like that goes wrong, it's better to just nip it in the bud and not have to, not make it a bigger issue than what it is. So my expectation is that he is going to try to play in back-to-back games. We'll see what happens. As of right now, I have no reason to believe he is not playing tonight. I believe he is. And so I would expect him to play tonight, and then we'll see how he feels, and maybe he plays again tomorrow.
All right, what's it say about this team? Embiid did not have a great game the other night. He was not very active in the offense. I think he scored like 14 points, and yet the team was able to really not have to use him. Josh had mentioned this off the air the other day, and I was trying to think about it last night. How many times did the Sixers win a game going away where Embiid just was not a big part of their offense?
Yeah, it's a credit to him because of, obviously he draws attention, right? He gets double, triple teamed on a nightly basis, has been for years. And I think this is a testament to a couple different things. I think, one, him being so much better at diagnosing those plays, being stronger with the basketball, and finding his outlets, whether it's a shooter, whether it's Ben Simmons cutting, whatever, what have you. Then next, it's Doc Rivers gets credit for his movement and the way his offense works, and for Ben Simmons to cut more, and for encouraging guys to kind of find floor spots better. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, is just the shooters. When you have Seth Curry and Danny Green, and you have this version of Tobias Harris and how well and how decisive he's playing lately, Joel Embiid even said it himself. When I pass it out of a double team right now, I'm confident the guy I pass it to is either going to make the right play or he's going to hit the shot. And I think that's a big part of it. I think you're seeing, Embiid making better decisions, the ball movement and the player movement is better, and then the guys flat around him, the guys are just flat out shooting better. So that combination has just led to this. It's led to Embiid, it's less of a load on him to score and more of him being smart and playing the right way. And I think he's done that massively through, for him 6 games, for the team 7 games.
So when you watch them play offensively, is Doc Rivers doing something different? Is this just a product of, hey, the roster construction is this much better? In other words, if they had this roster last year, we'd be having a similar conversation last year. Or is there something that you're noticing that has changed that is causing them to look fun and fluid offensively?
Yeah, I don't think it's dramatic schematically. I really don't. I do believe that Doc Rivers does encourage, again, more movement, more quick decision-making. When he talks about pace, he's not necessarily talking about, Ben Simmons pushing the ball up the floor in every possession, which that is part of it. But it's more about, don't dribble the ball into the ground and, pass it around. And I think, yes, you can put some of that blame on Brett Brown. I think that what his explanation was, and it's understandable, that when he was in San Antonio and the way they used Tim Duncan was, make sure that Tim Duncan knows where his outlets are. So don't move a lot on the perimeter and trust Tim Duncan, who was, one of the greatest forwards ever to play basketball, make the right decision. So maybe in a sense, maybe Brett Brown was putting too much on Joel Embiid because he wasn't quite there yet. He wasn't on that Tim Duncan level, that IQ. Again, Tim Duncan is one of the smartest basketball players to ever play. So maybe there was expecting a little too much from me too soon, and now he's getting better. But yeah, I think roster is a huge part of it, because how many times did we see last year the ball come out to Al Horford or Josh Richardson? And listen, I'm not ripping those guys. It's just not who they are as players. But how many times we would see them get maybe an okay look and then turn it into a bad look, or turn it into a turnover, or dribble the ball into the ground for a shot clock violation. So I think the personnel is a huge part of it. I think Seth Curry and Danny Green, beyond being good shooters, they are just really smart basketball players that really understand ball movement and really understand player movement. So I think to answer it simply, I think it's a combination of both. I think Doc is encouraging more ball and player movement, and I think the roster is just much better set up for that.
when looking at Ben Simmons, offensively speaking, because we know what he does defensively and facilitating-wise, he looks comfortable in that corner spot. Not like he's popping it insanely, but there's something different in that corner spot from the three-point perspective. He's aggressive, although you can argue he's weak around the basket, I would say. Is this version of Ben Simmons good enough when it matters?
It's tough to say. I think he's going to get – I think for starters, him attacking the basket and him going to the rim, although I agree with you, he's not finishing at an efficient enough clip. The fact that he's doing it, I think, is really encouraging, especially when he's doing it when Joel Embiid is on the floor. Because I keep harkening back to there was a stretch last year. It was over a course of 2 games where Joel Embiid missed the bulk of it, and it was the best stretch of Ben Simmons' career offensively. He was ridiculous. I mean, we all remember that Nets game where he just terrorized the Nets for 48 minutes. It was one of the best basketball games I've seen him play. I would say it was the best basketball game I've ever seen him play. He was just unbelievable, getting to the basket and kind of doing what he wanted. And I see no reason why maybe not that guy with Joel Embiid in the lineup, but a similar version of that can't come to fruition and can't manifest on this team. I don't see why it can't. And I think that's a part of it is just him being better at finishing around the rim. Which, listen, he's not going to get better finishing around the rim unless he's trying to do it. So I think it's an encouraging sign that he's trying to do it, that he's trying to be aggressive and finish around the rim. I do agree with you, too, as well with the corner. He's much more comfortable in that corner spot. It is the easiest shot to hit as far as three-pointers are concerned, so that makes sense. And to me, I think encouraging, too, is there haven't been as many moments, and again, them being so great offensively makes it easier, but there haven't been moments where I was like, man, I really wish he would have taken that shot, or man, I really wish he would have drove the lane here instead. I haven't seen as many of those moments. Again, when guys are hitting shots and when the offense is moving fluidly, that helps that. But again, do I think he can be – I think he can be better for sure. And do I think this version is good enough? Well, if this version of Tobias Harris stays where he is, and this version of Seth Curry and this version of Joel Embiid, then, yeah, maybe he is because of how dominant he is defensively. Maybe that is good enough.
More on Tobias Harris in a minute, and you can get Paul's story on Tobias Harris now at 97.3ESPN.com. But I want to stick with Simmons for a minute because you just asked Broads about, is this a good enough version? It can be because, like what you just said, Paul, is there's not so many moments where you're like, he had the shot, or we're not complaining that Ben doesn't shoot now because of Curry and because of Green, the defender has to take a step closer to the arc, which gives a bigger lane for – it's not as cluttered for Simmons, so he has so much more room to create and operate because the other two's defenders have to scoot towards them as opposed to in the past. I don't care if Richardson catches the ball out there. I don't care if Harris or Horford catch the ball on the wing. Let them shoot it from there. The defender can't do that anymore, and it's given Simmons like a whole new world in there.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, this is when Daryl Morey talked to us all offseason about what he did, or I shouldn't say all offseason, you know what I mean, though. It was obviously a very abbreviated offseason, but when he talked to us, this is what he wanted. He saw what it looked like with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and when they were surrounded by shooters, and that was the best offensive version of this basketball team. So he set out to do that, and he did it. I mean, Danny Green and Seth Curry are from, and I've been this all along, from a fit standpoint, such significantly better fits than Josh Richardson and Al Horford. And no discredit to those guys. They are good basketball players. They were not fits here, especially when you factor in how Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid want to play. I will say, too, when I'm watching Ben Simmons, I feel like, and I'm not saying this because he's taking threes. I think that has nothing to do with it. I think that last year, that stretch that I was alluding to before, teams were giving him space, and he was eating it. He was kind of what we see Giannis Antetokounmpo do in Milwaukee, where he gets that space and he attacks it, and then he finishes at the rim. He was doing that last year for a significant chunk of the season. This year, I haven't seen as many guys just completely play off him, like play in the paint like we've seen in years past. So I think that they are respecting that he might drive on them if they try to do that, and it might, and to your point, Mike, it does. It creates more because if you give Ben Simmons that space and he starts driving to the lane, the defense is going to collapse, and he's going to find Danny Green or Seth Curry or Tobias Harris right now. So right now, I think the blueprint you're seeing is what they had in mind, and it's working very early. But we'll see how it goes. When they play better defensive teams and they play some of this stiffer competition coming up, we'll see how it looks then.
So let's get to Tobias Harris. What have you seen differently out of him this year for this strong start? And I will say it's not just offensively, it's defensively as well.
Yeah, 100%. And just to start with offense, I will say just a confidence level that is higher than I've seen him play a single game with the Sixers over the course of the last 6 games. And so for me, I will say this too. The Washington game, obviously the opener, was really troubling. He really struggled in that game. Poor decision-making, forcing some stuff, or just not seeing the floor well. I know some people were encouraged by the Nets and the Cavaliers games because he scored a few points and hit a few shots. I have to be honest, I was not. I still was a little bit worried about his decision-making. I still was worried about – I just flat out think he wasn't seeing the floor well. Over the last few games, complete opposite. I think he's – the Toronto game was the one that really stood out to me where I was like, okay, this is the version. If this is the guy we see for, the rest of the season, this guy can help this team out in a big way. And I think you've seen that over the course of the last few games. And listen, I think he's hit 47% of his threes right now. That's not sustainable. It's just not going to happen. Is it reasonable to expect over 40? Yes, because he's done that before. So that's reasonable. 47% not sustainable. But what is sustainable is the type of basketball he is playing. He is decisive. He's making quick decisions. He's being aggressive. He's playing confident. He's playing free. And that is the version of Tobias Harris we have not seen here in Philadelphia. But over the last few games we have. And you touched on his defense. I mean, when he got here, Ben Simmons literally laughed when he said that. When he laughed and said, Tobias is not the same player he was defensively when he came here to what he is now. And it's a credit to him. He has worked really hard to get better. He spent off seasons focusing really on defense. And that's – listen, and I get with Tobias Harris, a lot of people, the contract, yeah, it's a lot of money, and he's probably never going to live up to that. But the one thing you have to say about the guy is he works. He became a three-point shooter. He was not when he entered the league. He worked at it. He became a three-point shooter. He was not a good defender even up to when he came to the Sixers. But he has become a pretty darn good defender, at least through these first few games. So if nothing else you can say about Tobias Harris, the guy does work, and you're seeing some of the fruits of that labor paying off.
Speaking of a guy working, Paul Hudrick's with us here, and I want you to kind of describe what your thoughts were when the Sixers got Dwight Howard and if they've changed at all. I mean, to me, Paul, this guy's image has been transformed unbelievably to the point when they signed him, I was like, what kind of clown show is this? To where you're now looking at this guy as the definitive leader of that team.
Yeah, I will say that I did see a few of his interviews when he signed with the Lakers, and that was obviously a big stepping stone for him because he was returning to a place where it didn't work out very well, where he was playing with Kobe Bryant, and it didn't work. They went to the finals, but obviously didn't win. But it just didn't quite work out there, and he wasn't a great fit at the time. And he had some growing up to do. And I think you saw a little bit with the Lakers. He was kind of morphing into that. He accepted his role as a backup. And you saw that throughout the playoffs, and you saw him kind of accept that. Now, when they made the signing, I liked it from a on-the-floor standpoint because he's coming in for the veteran minimum, and he's a solid backup center. The off-the-court stuff, I wasn't sure because, like I said, I saw some of the maturation a little bit with the Lakers, but there's still some stuff that he said even during like the bubble times that kind of freaked me out a little bit. But to your point, Mike, since he has been here from literally the first time we talked to him after he signed, the vibe he has put off, you first heard it and you thought, okay, this is a guy he's saying all the right things because he's here and Daryl Morey wanted him here, and he's just saying all the right things that get in everyone's good graces. But as time has gone on, man, he is walking the walk. You see him out there post-game, taking shots and still getting in a workout afterwards, encouraging young guys to do the same. And you'll hear every single player to a man on this team right now will tell you how big Dwight Howard has been from an energy perspective, from a leadership perspective. And then let's not forget that he's actually played pretty darn well. He's attacked the offensive glass big time. When Charlotte went to that small lineup, I think he struggled in the first half, but the second half, he really took advantage of that. And I think, you see how hard he screens and rolls for the young guys like Milton and Maxey. And, I think right now, again, on a veteran minimum contract, this looks like a slam dunk contract, and it's not a slam dunk move for Daryl Morey.
I know you were very high on Tyrese Maxey. Last game alone, a couple threes, one pretty deep, a steal from Malik Monk, which led to a slam, a steal in the defensive paint, going the length of the court, finished with contact. How impressed are you with him?
It's unbelievably for a 20-year-old rookie to step into this environment and to not only earn minutes but thrive in them is pretty unprecedented. Like I kind of warned about earlier, I am curious to see what happens when the competition steps up. When maybe in the Brooklyn game, does he have to guard Kyrie for any amount of time or something like that? There's going to be tests ahead for him, but the early returns, man, I am just blown away because. And like you said, man, I was very high on him. I thought there was no way he should have got 21. I thought he should have been a lottery pick. I understand the concerns of the shot, but now he's hit three of his last 4 threes, I believe, at the NBA level. He looks good. The form looks great. You already see how good he looks getting to the rim, finishing. He's got that unbelievable floater package he has, and the sky's the limit. I mean, this is, again, 20 years old this guy is, and he's already earning minutes, playing well in them for a team that's trying to compete, that has right now currently has the best record in the NBA. So I would suspect that, and I would hope that as this season goes on, he's only going to get better, and that's very encouraging for the Sixers.
Paul Hudrick, you've been around the team for the last couple of years, so you've seen the, the question I have is about the assistant coaches and how much that has played a role in all this. I was not a Brett hater by any stretch. For Paul, I mean, we know each other, very very early here. So I was not a Brett Brown hater guy. My whole thing is the NBA coach just doesn't have this huge role like people. They have their role. It's a players' league. The players win. It's funny. Nick Nurse all of a sudden can't coach. You know why? Oh, they don't have a good roster all of a sudden anymore. that happens. But to me, Brett was blamed for just about everything, and it's like, look, they just didn't have a good roster. That's what it comes down to. They didn't have a good roster. Was Brett a great coach? No. Was he a horrible coach? No. Most NBA coaches are just kind of there, and I think there are more voices, but the professionalism of the staff, I think, is that if I can blame Brett for one thing, it's he didn't have a great staff, and that's not his fault. They didn't have a great staff around him. This staff, I think, has really added to the players like Ben and Joel and Tobias listening and just getting much better tutelage from professionals, more so than some of it's not their fault. They just had a really young, green assistant staff.
Yeah, with Brett Brown, I'm pretty much in the same exact boat as you. Look, I don't think he was Greg Popovich 2.0 by any means, but I also don't think he was, Eddie Jordan. Like, I think he was somewhere in the middle of that. And, you look at the roster they gave him the last couple of years and you expected him to win and win championships. I mean, 2 years ago, let's put it this way, when they had Jimmy Butler, that team was a couple bounces away from going to the Eastern Conference Finals. So let's not discredit him there. And what his task was there to make that all work, to integrate Jimmy Butler, then to integrate Tobias Harris, to not have a real backup center, and to get the team to Game 7 in Toronto was a pretty good feat in itself. Last year, yeah, the roster was bad. And I will say, for me, being around the team and being around Brett Brown, he lost them. He did. He lost the team last year. And that happens. It was that, I think,
Agree.
anyone calling for him to have been fired before that, I think, was premature. Last year was the year. That was it. You could tell. You could hear it in his voice. He was kind of resigned to the fact he knew that his time was probably running out. So that's my 2 cents on Brett Brown. And I would also say his staff got poached a little bit over the years too. Look at Lloyd Pierce, Monty Williams. He's had some good assistants. Guys just get jobs, and that's kind of what happened. You see what's happened to Doug Peterson's staff with the Eagles, right? It's kind of a similar thing. You do well, you have success. You guys are getting poached. It's just the way that kind of goes. But I do agree with you that Doc Rivers and the staff he has assembled is top notch. You really couldn't have done much better. You see the impact already that Sam Cassell has had on Ben Simmons and how he's really listening. And I think Sam being such a good NBA guard for so long and having that experience, Ben, he's already earned Ben's respect, as soon as he walked in the door. So I think that's been huge. When you look at a guy like Dave Yeager, who's, coached 2 different places and had success as an NBA head coach, he's got a little bit, some of his PR stuff may not be great, some of his personality stuff, hear stories about. But listen, as a strategic coach, he's a pretty damn good coach. So Doc Rivers getting him as kind of his lead assistant. And then Dan Burke, what he did in Indiana, he was with Indiana through I think 4 different coaching changes. So this guy clearly knows how to coach defense. So for Doc Rivers to get him to join his staff and take over the defense, where you see they've changed the strategy big time, where they were trying to take away threes before. Now they're trying to protect the paint and not foul, and you're seeing that already happening under Burke. So, yeah, I think that not only Doc Rivers, but, yes, I think Doc Rivers did an excellent job assembling his staff. And I think, too, a lot of times coaches will just hire guys they know. And I think Doc Rivers doesn't do that. I think he hires guys he just knows can coach. Like him and Dave Yeager didn't really have a connection, but he brought Dave Yeager in. Same with Dan Burke. He didn't really have a personal connection with those guys. He just knew that they could coach, and so that's why he wanted them on his staff.
Follow him on Twitter at Paul Hudrick. His podcast is coming in for a landing, and of course, you can read his Sixers coverage at 97.3ESPN.com. Sixers and Wizards tonight here on 97.3. It's at 7 o'clock. Tom McGinnis has the call. Paul, we'll talk to you Friday, man.
Sounds good, Mike.
All right, he's back for Inside the Sixers on Friday's show.